Shock at COP28. COP28 president says there's no science behind demands for phase out of fossil fuels. Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science, and here I am in chilly old Canada. I'm not a snowflake, but it's starting to snow outside, and everybody's over there in Dubai having a wonderful time in a fabulous place. Beautiful city, a miracle in the midst of the desert. And today we had some big news out of COP28. The president of COP28 actually told the truth that there's no science behind demands for phase out of fossil fuels. What? Can you believe it? Surprise! All these people think that there is. So Antonio Guterres says the 1.5 degree limit is only possible if we ultimately stop the burning of fossil fuels, not reduce, not abate, phase out. And here's Senator Rosa Galvez, who's busy trying to dismiss carbon capture and storage as a means of reducing CO2. Here's the EU chief Ursula von der Leyen. The message is very clear. If you're polluting, you must pay a price. If you want to avoid the payment, then innovate and decarbonize. And Catherine McKenna, of course, she's partnering up with Rosa Galvez, the senator, on climate-aligned finance. We need credible data on net zero to distinguish leaders from laggards. And of course, Calgary's Dr. Joe Vipond. Today's debunction junction, the scariest part of the COP28 adventure, OPEC flagged by the gas exporting countries. We won't win as long as they keep prolonging the fossil fuel era. Well, the president of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber, has claimed there's no science indicating that a phase out of fossil fuels is needed to restrict global heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius, The Guardian and the Center for Climate Reporting can reveal. Al-Jaber also said a phase out of fossil fuels would not allow sustainable development unless you want to take the world back into caves. Shock, yes. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber told Mary Robinson to stop pointing fingers and show the solutions. Stop it, he said. It's quite an interesting little conversation that went on here. And he told Mary Robinson straight to her face that there's no science behind the demands for phase out of fossil fuels. And he said that phase out of coal, oil, and gas would take the world back into caves. Now, she insisted that she talked with everyone and that everyone was on board with this goal. But he insisted that he was the man in charge of the delegation, and he said, show me what you can do. Show me your contributions. And he asked her to show how the world could evolve without the use of fossil fuels. And in fact, he's absolutely right. What's ironic, let me just get to this. What's quite ironic is that about 100 countries signed on to triple the number of renewables in their countries. To triple. Well, how do you think those things get made? And you can see that Václav Smil wrote this great article for IEEE Spectrum, and he talks about how much oil, gas, and coal is required to make a wind turbine, to make a solar panel. And we did kind of a cute little funny video. But here, like a 5 megawatt turbine has three roughly 60 meter long airfoils, each weighing about 15 metric tons, made from natural gas byproducts and in furnaces fired by natural gas. So if you're going to go to renewables, you're going to use way more natural gas and coal and oil. And here's John Lee Pettimore. He's a former mining mechanic. He's worked all over the world. See, these are the big machines that are used for mining. See how big they are compared to the little human being? So these need lots and lots of diesel and lots of lubricant. Fuel capacity is 1,249.6 gallons. Cooling system fluid capacity is 200.3 gallons. Engine oil capacity, 103.1 gallons. Differential and final drive fluid capacity, 74 gallons. Steering system fluid capacity, 39.7 gallons. Brake hoist system fluid capacity, 398.9 gallons. Things that we need to make green energy. Yeah. So we're going to need a lot more oil, gas, and coal. It's almost like Sultan Al-Jaber hoped people would wake up being in Dubai, in the desert. So, of course, we have Bill Hare here, who's one of the legends that Donna Laframboise talked about in her book, The Delinquent Teenager. As an activist, a climate activist, he claims that Sultan Al-Jaber's dismissal of the need for a phase-out verges on climate denial. So look at this. This is beautiful Dubai. This city is obviously energy intense. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And here's the Burj Khalifa, the jewel in the crown of Dubai. It's 160 stories. So this is a very interesting website. I just took a few screenshots from it, but you can read through all these different stories because they have 160 different stories about the stories. And here's one of them. The world records for this building: tallest man-made structure, tallest freestanding structure, largest number of stories, highest occupied floor, highest outdoor observation deck, world record for vertical concrete pumping, tallest service elevator, highest aluminum and glass facade. And the Burj Khalifa comprises a record-breaking 330,000 cubic meters, or 11.6 million cubic feet of concrete. That's pretty CO2 intense. 39,000 megatons of reinforced steel, 103,000 square meters, or 1.1 million square feet of glass, and 15,500 square meters, or 166,800 square feet of embossed stainless steel. It took 22 million man-hours to build the tower. Pumping concrete. Throughout the project, high compressive strength concrete mixtures were used to withstand the record-breaking height. Pours were only done at night, with the concrete being chilled prior to mixing, and part of the water being replaced with shards of ice. And it has a huge, strong foundation. Burj Khalifa's superstructure is supported by a 3.7 meter thick reinforced concrete mat. It took 12,500 cubic meters of high-density, low-permeability concrete to build the mat. A cathodic protection system under the mat helps to mitigate the effects of corrosive chemicals in the groundwater. And apparently when you get to the top, you can look out through the observation deck and you actually can see a vision of the time of what Dubai looked like before the city's spectacular skyline was built. And here's that spectacular skyline. Now, all that took energy. All those people are there. There's about 70,000 people who came there for COP28, and they're all enjoying air-conditioned comfort in these fabulous buildings in the middle of a desert. So what's Canada doing there? So Canada at the federal level is pushing global carbon pricing, and they've been doing this since September 20th. They were at the UN during UN Climate Week, and they were pushing global pricing for carbon. And at that point, Minister Guilbeault tells everyone climate change is seen in our wildfires, which is not true. Wildfires are not a sign of climate change. And here's Senator Rosa Galvez again. A growing number of countries are looking to carbon price to achieve climate objectives while raising new revenues. That would be taxation, right? The concept is simple. Make polluters pay for what they emit. It can take the form of a tax or an emissions trading scheme, ETS. So that's what the federal level is promoting. And what does that mean? Well, of course, the World Economic Forum predicted that by 2030, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy, and there'll be a global price on carbon. Meantime, the more practical provinces are there pushing for jobs, trade, innovation, and resources. So here's what Daniel Smith has been up and about, and here's what Premier Scott Moe is talking about. The Saskatchewan International Trade Offices are on display. So Net Zero Watch is calling it Flop 28. Like even China's climate envoy says fossil fuel phase out is unrealistic. Oil, gas, and coal will continue to play a crucial role in global energy supply and in maintaining energy security. That's just so common sense. And this is one of Josh's great cartoons. He's got hundreds of these. Very good. So I exchanged some emails with Robert Lyman, who's an energy economist and a retired federal public servant. Now, many of you know Robert Lyman's work. We've got over 300 of his reports and blog posts on our website. And he was our guest speaker recently at our 20th Friends of Science Climate Science event. His topic at the time was, when will climate policy hit the wall? And it sounds like maybe it's hitting it at COP28. Anyway, he had these comments, so I asked if I could relate them to you in this video, and he said sure. So let me just read what Robert Lyman had to say about this news out of Dubai. So he's commenting on Sultan Al Jaber and saying he's exactly right in his comments. The Guardian, as usual, does not tell the whole story. The issue being debated at COP28 concerns the alleged need to phase out or phase down fossil fuel, and particularly oil and gas production. The zealots deliberately obscure the distinction between the emissions from hydrocarbons consumption and from production. Then Robert goes on to talk about the IEA, that's the International Energy Agency, on global emissions from energy and industrial processes. As reported by the International Energy Agency, the global emissions from all energy and industrial processes, this ignores natural sources, in 2022 was 36.8 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. Of this total, oil consumption produced 11.2 billion tons, and natural gas consumption produced 7.3 billion tons, for a combined total of 50.3%. So that's consumption. So is it evil oil and gas companies, or is it evil you? Oil and gas production, however, only accounts for about 20% of the fuel cycle emissions, or about 10% of total oil and gas related emissions. It may be easy to attack evil oil and gas producers when the ones who would really suffer from diluted policies to eliminate these fuels are the consumers. And you can see why here, because this is what we end up using in our daily lives. 6,000 products it actually works out to. So you can phase out fossil fuels, but then we'll have none of these. Not to mention we'll have trouble heating our homes. So one of the odd things here is that while the climateers are busy trying to shut down vital energy, the United Arab Emirates is planning to be a world leader in artificial intelligence. So I think that that's kind of an important thing to think about, that, here you have actually a fairly tiny country geographically. I think it fits into Alberta a few dozen times, and 9.3 million people or so, but it's very wealthy because of oil and gas. It's created this magnificent city in the desert that functions very well, and it has long-term and global strategies, where what do we see here in Canada? Do we see that same kind of visionary thinking? We keep hearing things about, well, we'll be a climate leader and we'll be a leader in green technology, but we don't actually see a particularly good strategy that shows us how we could be that, especially if our people are busy most of the time trying to shut down fossil fuels, which is absolutely essential. Like even for artificial intelligence, of course, you can't run servers without reliable energy and lots of it. So, of course, they have lots of that in the UAE, and so do we. We have lots too. So, really, we have to beware of climate zealots. Robert adds, the bottom line is that if by some miracle the UN could dictate the end of all oil and gas use, it would only eliminate only half of energy-related CO2 emissions. And the zealots say we have to eliminate all of them within 27 years. So just remember that Al-Jaber also said a phase out of fossil fuels would not allow sustainable development unless you want to take the world back into caves. So these are some Canadians who want to take us back into caves. This was environmental defense presentation hosted by Environmental Defense. Sephora Berman was there, the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, that's who she represented, and Stand Earth. Carol Montour was there, Indigenous Climate Action. Julia Levin was there from Environmental Defense Canada, Julie Siegel from Environmental Defense Canada, and Dr. Joe Vipond for the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment and the Calgary Climate Hub. Now, Oil Change International, which is another environmental non-governmental group, another unelected, unaccountable organization, claims that there are 320 organizations that call on the COP28 presidency to show true leadership and abandon plans to coordinate greenwashed voluntary commitments from big oil. And they want to end fossil fuels, no voluntary pledges, phase out fossil fuels. So, but you see, it doesn't really matter if there's 300 or 1,000 organizations who demand that if it can't be done. And that's really what Sultan Al-Jaber was trying to get from Mary Robinson. It's okay, you can demand anything you want. I demand that you phase out fossil fuels and triple the amount of renewables. Okay, show us how that can be done. Because it can't be done unless you want people to live in caves, literally. So until some of these organizations that are very big about telling people how to live their lives come up with actual methods and solutions, why should we listen to them? And of course, we have to think about the fact that since Robert Lyman outlined that oil and gas as corporations actually produce a very small amount of emissions, it's the consumers that produce the most. And since we know there's a push for a price on carbon globally by these activists like our Minister Guilbeault and Senator Rosa Galvez, well, it might be time for a personal carbon ration. Are you ready for that? So we have this presentation on our blog and also in our live streams. You can see the recorded live stream. But this is a thing that people will be given a personal carbon ration. And if you run out, then you just buy credits from someone else. Is that really how you want to live your life? And a friend sent this to me. I don't exactly know the source of the quote, but I think this is very true. This is the essential evil of environmentalism. Not that it doesn't make sense to ensure that we have clean air, clean water, and restrict unnecessary emissions and the wastes generated by a modern society, but that they would run that society like a totalitarian government. The Greens, at heart, are despots, convinced of their own righteousness, called to tell everyone how many children they should have, how many cars they can own, where they can live, and what work they can pursue. And we've really seen that totalitarian bent coming to light recently. Of course, Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan was told that it would be criminal for him to continue using coal in Saskatchewan to keep people from dying in the middle of winter. Um, and he just basically told Minister Guilbeault, come get me. We've seen Alberta squaring off with Ottawa and with Minister Guilbeault and Minister Wilkinson because we need to have conventional backup and dispatchable power for our power grid. We've phased out coal almost entirely, and we need equivalent natural gas. And people don't want to build natural gas if it means that, you know, 5 or 10 years down the line, they might be put in jail for having built a natural gas power plant and operating it. So I think Sultan Al Jaber, thank you very much for calling out these ludicrous phase out fossil fuel people. And you know, he's a chemical engineer by training and also um, an economist. So he understands this very, very well. So fossil fuel phase out? Well, Robert Lyman had this closing comment to quote a famous line used by Jack Nicholson in the 1997 movie As Good as It Gets, when his character is solicited for help by a slightly foolish woman. He said, "Go sell crazy somewhere else. We're all stocked up here." Of course, here is Elizabeth May. Shocking and shameful. COP28 president reveals his true colors. Yes, he is the head of a national oil company. Climate negotiators gave him the benefit of the doubt. Now we know Al Jaber is not on the right side of history nor of the planet. So if we were following Elizabeth May, it would be back to the caves. So we've got lots more to come from COP28. It's going to be going on until the 12th of December. I'm sure we'll have more stories for you. So if you enjoy these kind of updates, please support Friends of Science Society. Join us, become a member, or donate. And you can also just send us an e-transfer. I enjoy doing these little explainers and giving you a few insights about what's going on over there and the implications for you, and relaying the insights from Robert Lyman, who spent 27 years in the federal government, 10 years a diplomat, mostly on the GHG file. He knows it very, very well. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join us again because we'll have more of these throughout the week. Thanks very much for watching. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Sterling. And please, do join us.